Hello, I am coming to you today with episode 13 of Straight From The Drafts, and you may have noticed that this week's episode got a slightly different introduction. I've kept the jingle, but I've ditched the blab, and that is for one very good reason. I am not vibing with it. We are 3 months into the podcast, and it's really just turning into its own thing. When I started the podcast, my intention was to set very clear themes each month, which would be led by the offers that I wanted to promote in business, and then the episode topics would trickle down into social media content, and it would all be this very streamlined content machine. And I did think that I'd have maybe one episode a month or something like that was a bit more neo, a bit more behind the scenes, rather than focusing purely on the business and social media strategy every episode. But what's actually happened is they're the episodes that I've really leaned into, the ones that I've actually enjoyed recording. I've sort of come up with the ideas quicker. So that doesn't really fit with the intro that I had. So we're saying bye for now to that intro, to any intro, and just letting the podcast be. Now, obviously, you want to know what you're tuning into each week, right? You want to know, is this podcast still for you? Is it something that you'll find helpful, interesting, any of those things? But honestly, right now, I can't give you clear direction. I'm not going to box it in and say it is going to be this one thing and we're going to talk about this one topic. What I will say is that the episode themes will still largely follow those of business and life, so social media strategy, being a solopreneur, being a young woman navigating the online space. But if the last 3 months is anything to go by, then that could end up covering all sorts, from comparison struggles to corporate life to shifts and trends that I'm seeing in content, or maybe chatting through the shifts and changes that are going on in my business in Social by Neo. What I can promise you is that I will continue to overshare because I can't help myself, and it will remain this sort of chatty, informal voice note style for the time being. Is this the best decision I've ever made? Absolutely not. It's lacking strategy, it's lacking clarity. But you know what? I'm fine with that for now. The main thing is that I still really believe that all of these topics, whichever category they fall under, will resonate or be interesting or insightful in some way, and maybe just have an impact on just one person that is listening right now. And the wouldn't it be cool if that I wrote down back in January for this podcast was, wouldn't it be cool if one person looked forward to the podcast every week? Now, I do know that I have that one person. I'm probably the soundtrack to one of my sister's runs as we speak. But hopefully there is one other person out there too, as much as Beth. Of course, you know how much I appreciate your support, as I'm sure you are listening right now. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is because that really sums up today's episode and what I wanted to share with you on a bigger scale. The changes aren't just happening inside the podcast, they're also happening inside the business. I shared a post on Instagram a couple of weeks ago about the crossroads that I felt like I was at, and I thought I'd use today's episode to give a bit more context, update on the thoughts that I've had since putting that post out, and yeah, no peep behind the curtain here. This is a full behind the scenes tour with audio guide and brochure. So the post in question, in case you didn't see it, or you just got no idea what I'm talking about, on the 2nd of July, I posted this. I have a confession to make. I'm not just busy, I'm busy overthinking. It turns out I'm a liar pants on fire, because on Monday I shared that I'm entering silly season, where life is busy with lovely things that I want to be present for, so I'll be a little quieter on socials to balance it all. But that's not the whole story. My calendar is actually silly and full of loveliness, those things are true, but if I'm really honest with myself, that's not why I'm being quiet on socials. What's actually going on is I'm overthinking everything. I always say and wholeheartedly believe that good content is content with purpose. Every post should have a goal, a strategy. So when you don't know where you're heading, What the fuck do you post? And right now, that's how I feel. Like I've been sat at a crossroads and I can't decide if I'm turning left, right, or going straight. For the first time in 3 years, I don't have a gut feeling screaming at me, so I'm just faffing, undecided. I've got a relatively small but completely gorgeous client roster right now, so that's all groovy. But I don't know what to tell you in my content. I don't know what the goal is, which service I want to shout about, or whether I want to shout about them at all. I have a ton of content sat in Asana ready to go. My team are all over it. We were prepped for this busy season, which is actually so different from silly season 2024, where I really did get too busy to think about my own content. So I could keep posting, and I wouldn't need to acknowledge my quietness. But posting for posting's sake feels wrong. It's the complete opposite of what I preach to my clients and to you. So I decided to put my big girl pants on and share. Bring you along for the ride so that if and when things change, it's not so out of the blue. Social by Now isn't going anywhere, but I may change direction slightly. Or maybe I'll put my foot on the accelerator and just speed forward with a bit more oomph. Watch this space, I guess. But in the meantime, this is just a PSA that everyone feels stuck sometimes. Making decisions as a solopreneur gets tiring sometimes. You'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. Just know you're not the only one. And that was 3 weeks ago now, which has flown. Silly season has been a whirlwind. There's been weddings, there's been birthdays, there's been a trip to Spain where, just for some added drama, I crashed my rental car. I wouldn't say that I feel heaps clearer right now than I did when I wrote that post. This episode and this week in the office is kind of the first murmurs of progress on making decisions since then. I had a long chat with my good pal Ellie in the pool in Spain. I shared some thoughts. She was very encouraging. She's the best at talking through things with you and like being the best cheerleader. So I felt heaps better after that. And then I flew home and immediately started doubting myself again because classic. And then 2 nights ago was my monthly sister date night, which this week felt like therapy. And as a side note, sister date nights are something that we started doing a few years back. We've moved out and lived apart, living with our partners now for years. And a few years ago, we realised that we didn't really spend that much time, just the two of us anymore. And I do think that it's good to do that sometimes. You can't moan about your partner when they're there. Even 10 out of 10 partners, like we're both very lucky enough to have. Sometimes you just need sister chats. So just a little recommendation there. Get monthly date nights scheduled in, whether it's with your siblings or your best friends, because it's always so good for the soul. I do this with one of my best friends as well, so I tend to have a monthly date night with my sister and a monthly date night with one of my oldest friends, and yeah, they're just so good. I always feel really grounded afterwards. I don't really know how else to describe it other than, yeah, just feeling really grounded. They're good for the soul, so recommend that. Anyway, so progress since putting that post out. Where am I at? Well, the business right now is dominated by social media management. That has always, in the 3 years that I've been running this business, been the core service that I provide and the bulk of my income. But in the last, honestly, I'd say like 6 or 7 months, something has been niggling away at me. Back at the retreat that I went to in January, we did Gallup Strength Finder tests. And it's about half an hour. You sit there and there's all these sort of scale multiple choice questions where you kind of answer how you would respond to things, and it pulls it all together and gives you your top 5 skills. You can pay to unlock the rest, but we just got our 5, and then there's a book that kind of explains a bit more about each skill and what it means and kind of careers that you might thrive in or things that you might find difficult. And it was really, really interesting. But kind of the high level takeaway from that is 4 of my top 5 fell into the people category. In first was developer, which means that I'm patient, especially with inexperience. Second, empathy. I have a strength in anticipating the reaction and needs of others and tailoring my work to meet their needs. Third, relator. Encouraging authenticity in groups. And fourth, again, these are all in the people category, positivity, which is defined by that strengths test as a multiplier of hope. You notice what is good and you aren't afraid to celebrate it. And it really sparked reflection that hasn't really stopped since. And I started thinking back on my corporate career and how I'd always felt a bit like a generalist. I always kind of joke that I peaked in school because I was sort of A-star student back at school, really nerdy, really got stuck into things, whereas in my working life, I've maybe felt like, I don't know, I don't want to say mediocre because that has very negative connotations, and as an auditor, I was ranked top of my peer group every time we got reviewed, which I think was like every half year, but was I the most technical? Did I know the accounting standards inside out? Absolutely not. Did I get on well with my seniors? Of course. When I was a web analyst, again, could I do big complex data analysis and set up Power BI or write scripts? Not really. The basics maybe. But I would be put on the client calls to share the data and tell the stories behind the numbers. I even got put onto the team that did a huge client pitch, and we won. Client meetings have never hugely bothered me. I've done them from being 18 in accounting. I mean, I still do them now. I've said before, people are just people, right? And in thinking that, I'm not a very technical analyst, what I'm realising now is maybe I was ignoring the skill that was right there in front of my face, the people side of things. And you might be wondering, okay, Nao, well, what relevance does this have? Well, first of all, I think it's a good reminder not to discount your skills and talents because they might look a little bit different to someone else's, especially maybe the people around you in your peer group, in your industry. And I always felt like a bit of an idiot in my analytics job because I found the technical stuff hard. So this is your reminder that if you're doing the same, then stop it because you are wonderful. Your strengths might just be different than someone else's strengths, and that doesn't mean that your strengths are less important or less worthy. But also, I'm sharing this, and I think this is relevant because I know that as much as people is a huge part of my role as a social media strategist and social media manager right now, I could be doing more. And I think that is what's been niggling away at me for the last 7 months. And that's what's making me think that I might change direction slightly. And I love my clients. I love our monthly check-in calls. I had one today, which just lit me up. I love celebrating my clients' wins with them. But could I be doing more to lean into those strengths that the Gallup test 7 months ago highlighted to me? I think I probably could. So where does that leave me? What's next for Social by Nao? Well, my social media management services aren't going anywhere. Hopefully, I've made that clear. I'm not going to abandon my clients, not my style. I think they're all brilliant humans with brilliant businesses that I really believe in, and I love supporting them. But I can see a world in which that is no longer my core service and instead maybe becomes 50% of my business. Potentially in the future, that drops down even further as I transition into a different style of service. Something that's maybe a little bit more done with you than done for you. A membership offering, a group program, one-to-one work that's got that sort of consulting format. And I did say that this would be a full behind-the-scenes tour, so I'll be honest with you, I do think that part of this has been triggered by getting engaged as well. I'm looking at sort of 12 to 18 months from now when I'm going to be getting married and hoping to take proper time off for a honeymoon. And I'm kind of thinking, the current setup doesn't work. And sure, I could go hard on turning Social by Nao into an agency by then, or give clients notice that I'm going to be away, and either we work really, really hard to cover enough content for that time off, or clients just take the month off from working together and they do their own content, or I do a bit of work while I'm on honeymoon, which my partner has already said, like, he's totally chill with, but I'm not totally chill with it. I want to be able to take some time at some stage. And honestly, none of those options feel like the right thing to do. I did say in that post 3 weeks ago that I didn't have a gut instinct screaming at me, but when it comes to this, I do feel like my gut, maybe it's not screaming, but it's pretty loud. I don't want to build a social media management agency. And that feels really odd to say out loud and with such certainty. But that's my truth right now. That to me feels like it maybe takes away the people connection from me, and I'd be passing that on to someone else. And I love that part so much. And I know there's probably someone listening that thinks that it's totally possible and that I've got that wrong, that it doesn't have to take away the people connection. But for me, it just doesn't feel like a solution right now. And I think combined with everything else and the other things that I've talked about during this episode, I think it's a combination. I think the lack of direction and this sort of need's not the right word, this craving maybe for a change, it comes from both of those places. Looking ahead to the future and knowing that maybe it's not what I'm doing right now, just on a bigger scale. And also really looking at my strengths and the things that I love most and thinking there's probably other offers that I could really thrive with in addition to management. And to share a little bit more detail, because why not? Currently, I'm seeing business owners generally sit in one of two camps. Either there's an ideation problem, you don't know what to post, or an implementation problem. So you have a ton of ideas, but either no time, a lack of processes, or a complete lack of confidence to actually execute them. And my sister has said to me forever now that she considers that one of my strongest skills is kind of cutting through the noise and actually hearing or seeing what the core issue is. And yes, lol, I am aware that this is hilarious given how unclear I am when it comes to my own stuff. But if there's ever an issue at work, for example, or if she's upset about something, I can usually pinpoint exactly what is really going on rather than hearing the words that she's actually just said. And I can see that in content ideation, and when it comes to working with my clients, I can look at an offer, hear about the target audience and the transformation and the words that they're saying, and go that layer deeper. Sometimes I hear words that they're not saying. Sometimes I just ask the right questions to get to that place. And I love understanding what my clients' goals are. Not like follow count or number of likes, but real actual goals. The weeks off that they want to have with their kids, the headspace that they so desperately want to get back because they feel like their brain is a garbage fire of chaos. And none of that is an offer suite or a business plan, but it is a starting point to designing Social Pine AO 2.0. And I feel more excited about that than the hole that I feel like I have been in. So that feels like massive progress. So when we kind of got to that place during sister therapy last night, my sister pressed me for what I was still faffing with. And I said that it just felt like a lot of decisions. I had to decide on the offer structure, how to price my new services. And immediately she came back with, well, what makes that different to any other time that you've done that? Why is it hard to price these new services versus pricing all the other services that you've offered over the last 3 years? And she got me there. As a business owner, I make decisions all the time. It can be tiring, but we just have to do it, don't we? And what I wasn't saying was that I was a bit scared. It felt new, it felt different, and it feels kind of illogical to let go of the safety net that I've built with my retainer clients right now So I'm very grateful to have someone holding up a mirror to me and calling me out on my bullshit, because honestly, I think I am just getting in my own way at this point. So this episode is me holding my hands up. It's me saying out loud that changes will be happening, because if I say it out loud, then it has to happen, right? And it's me bringing you along behind the scenes so that, one, if you ever feel messy or indecisive, then you know that you are not alone. And two, I just really don't think I could be mysterious and inauthentic if I tried. I am acutely aware that today's episode has been a bit of a therapy session, but the more conversations like this that we can have, then the less we'd all beat ourselves up and be comparing ourselves to each other on the internet. So I was going to apologise, but I don't think I will. And as I've been talking through those last couple of points, I also know what the cheesy quote of today's episode is going to be. So I think I will end and wrap up with this. You cannot cross the ocean unless you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. So with that, thank you so much for listening today, and genuinely, if you have listened all the way through, then please do let me know if any of this has resonated or if you've enjoyed this episode. It may not be the most strategic corner of the internet right now, but I am really loving being here, and having you listening along means the absolute world. So I hope you have a gorgeous rest of your day, and I will speak to you again next week. Bye!